PodCastle, episode 854 for Tuesday the 27th of August 2024. A double feature, comprising City Grown from Seed by Diana Dima and read by Tanya Milejevich, rated PG-13, and Harvest House by Sarah Omer, narrated by Kitty Sarkozy and rated G, both produced by Devin Martin. Good morning, good day, good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to PodCastle, the flying castle of fantasy fiction. I'm your host, Matt Dovey, and it is my pleasure and privilege to present a pair of, well, I can't think of a good word that begins with P, so we'll have to use stories, still, for your enjoyment. First up is City Grown from Seed by Diana Dima, narrated by Tanya Milejevich. This story was first published in Strange Horizons, August 2023, and is rated PG-13, with content notes for the off-screen death of a parent and mild references to domestic violence. Diana Dima is a writer and neuroscientist living in Canada. Her speculative fiction has appeared in Strange Horizons, Choreo magazine, The Deadlands and elsewhere. You can find her online at www.dianadima.com. Tanya Milejevich is originally from Serbia but has been in the US since the age of 5. She has been voice acting since her senior year of high school and can be heard all over, including Coach Studios' Ancestry, You Are Here, 11th Hour's Heavenly Deception, What's the Frequency, Broken Sea Audio Productions, Greater Boston, 19 Nocturne Boulevard, and Edict Zero. She produces her own radio dramas and posts them to her podcast, Lightning Bolt Theatre of the Mind. She says, I'm visually impaired and have ROP and glaucoma, but use Goldwave and Soundforge to record and post-produce my audio. And now pay attention, for our tale is about to begin, and it's come with you such a long way.
City Grown from Seed by Diana Dima. Narrated by Tanya Milejevich. Long before you came along, I was myself, just the seed in Rafa's pocket. Something she fumbled with as she stepped onto the plane, her other hand clutching her mother's. Small as I was, I sensed her fear. I tried to hum reassuringly. Above the ocean, I helped her fall asleep. She planted me soon after landing, behind the park, by a graffitied wall, hidden from view by maple trees. She seemed half ashamed, yet she came every day to water me and sit beside me. We can't grow without stories. And she made sure I never went hungry. At first, they were stories from home, full of her aunt's golden yeast pastries and hand-knitted dolls. Later, they were made-up tales of dragons that came to whisk her away from the cramped walk-up apartment, or fairies that did her mother's work while she slept, or spells that made you speak every language in the world. I loved all the stories, even those that made Rafa sad. Little by little, I bloomed. A single clock tower. There is a tower at the heart of every city, no bigger than a blade of grass, with little dirt roads radiating from it, then tiny red-roofed houses and the neoclassical theater and kiosks on every corner and markets and packs of stray dogs. At first, Rafa had to bring a magnifying glass to look at me. Then I grew large enough that she could count my windows with the naked eye. She worried about rain and raccoons. She brought a big glass bowl from home and set it over me like a dome. I'm going to be in so much trouble, she said. And I found it funny how she switched to English in mid-sentence, as though she couldn't remember the words. When school started, she stopped coming so often. She only dropped by on Sunday mornings and crouched beside me checking for new buildings. I didn't fit under the bowl anymore. The clock tower came up to her chest. Her stories changed. She told me about the boys she didn't like, and about May, who she maybe liked too much, and who lived in a big house in the suburbs with a garden and a barbecue in the garage. One day I saw Rafa from a distance, walking hand in hand with a girl. She'd grown tall, but I was taller. She looked at me sideways and turned away, pulling the girl with her. It stung a little. I didn't mean to grow the abandoned 5-story garage by the river. It sprung up like a pimple after they left. I had no room to sprawl, so I grew inwards, roads knotting and twisting, buildings folding in unexpected places. I waited for Rafa to walk through my gates. I hung baskets of flowers on the lampposts and put up banners and the festival stage. I filled the streets with smells of honey-soaked pastry, of summer days and river picnics. Every house brimmed with Rafa's memories. It took a long time for her to come back. And she wasn't alone. She stopped at a distance, whispering in the girl's ear. Even though I wasn't pleased she'd brought someone else, I made myself as welcoming as I could. Gates thrown open, road laid out like a carpet for them. They walked in holding hands, chuckling together. I made the sunlight bounce off windows and rooftops so that Rafa marveled looking up. And I could tell she remembered everything. "It's strange," the girl said. "This is your hometown?" Rafa mumbled, "Sort of." And I was so happy she'd come, I let it slide. I carried them deeper inside, and Rafa marveled at how large I'd grown. "We could actually live here," she said uncertainly, walking past the white-columned theater where she'd spent Saturday nights with her aunt. In the market, she tried the peach and gave one to the girl. "It's just like I remember." "It's a little creepy," the girl said. I brought them to the clock tower. The plaza around it bathed in golden light, and they sat on the crescent steps. The girl had found some chalk and was playing with it. "Let's write our initials on this wall," she said. Rafa asked, "Really?" And I didn't think she'd let her do it, but she did. She watched her friend draw the M and R across the bricks, and the sun went down suddenly. It was my fault. It's hard to shine a summer sun when I'm angry. The girl looked a little scared. "Let's go back," she said, putting her arm through Rafa's. I didn't stop them getting out, but didn't help them either. So they wandered for a while, until they found the gates. Rafa looked back for a moment before the girl pulled her away. After that, I didn't see Rafa for a long time. Longer than ever before. I almost forgot her. At least part of me tried, opening cracks and facades and digging potholes in the roads, breaking windows so all the memories would drift out of houses. I grew wild. I grew chipped paint, sagging walls, glowing signs with letters missing, slippery things scurrying down dark alleys, ivy creeping up the theater's columns. Bony dogs howled in the night. There was a fire, and it left piles of rubble on street corners and black smears across the clock tower. When Rafa came back, I didn't see her arrive. You mustn't judge. I'd closed my eyes to the outside world by then, and looked only inwards. Perhaps hoping if I grew deep enough, I might emerge home again. On the other side of the world. The gate was overgrown with brambles, and Rafa squeezed through it with her clothes torn and arms scratched. I didn't know what to do. One of my roads had started unrolling at her feet, eager to welcome her, but I pulled it back. It had been so long I barely knew her. She made her way through narrow alleys, over fallen lampposts, around piles of bricks. I thought she'd give up, go back. but she kept going. Even when I put the sun down and lengthened the night. Even when I sent dogs to trail her in low, growling packs. Even when I filled the streets with rotting smells. She kept walking until she found the clock tower and collapsed on its time-eaten steps, and the pigeons gathered around her. In a low voice, with her head in her hands, she told me a new story. The words fell like bitter rain after a drought. Halfway through, I tried not to listen anymore, but couldn't. I wasn't built that way. So I learned all about May, about the bruises Rafa hid under long-sleeved jumpers, about Rafa's mother, and how she died in the small apartment, thousands of miles away from home. I came to see if I could bury her here, Rafa said. But this isn't home either. If she'd have looked up just then, she'd have seen a crack zigzag across the clock face on the tower, splitting it in two. When she started walking again, I didn't let go. Roads spiraled tight under her feet, and row houses duplicated turn after turn until she grew dizzy, stumbling back into the shadow of the clock tower. She slumped down on the steps and cried. She said, between sobs, "I can't find my way in here, just like I can't find it out there." Something thawed in that hard, charred heart of mine then. I grew ashamed. Did part of me still want to keep her, spinning her around so she'd never find her way out? Perhaps. But I'd been lonely for a long time. Let us not speak of it any longer. I unrolled the road at Rafa's feet and opened the gates for her. She thought it a trick at first, but eventually she rose and walked away, swaying, unsteady, on her feet. She mumbled, "Thank you." I didn't think I'd see her again, to be honest. I didn't think I deserved it. But the year hadn't yet passed when she came back. With a woman, someone new. They stopped at a distance, and Rafa showed her the city she'd grown from seed. Though I opened the gates, they didn't come in. They looked at me for a long time, and the woman squeezed Rafa's shoulders, and Rafa leaned her head against the woman's. "I'll be back soon," Rafa said to me before leaving. Waiting wasn't so hard after that. For the first time, I let some of the spring come in from outside, sweeping fresh air through the winding alleys. I repainted houses, weeded gardens, cleared rubble, chased away rats. Rafa kept her promise. She came back and wandered the streets and told me about Lucia, how she made Rafa's chest feel lighter, with more room to breathe. The next time they came together, they walked hand in hand to the tower, stared up at the cracked clock face. "It's beautiful," Lucia said. She looked at Rafa, looking up. "We could live here a while if you want." I shivered down to my roots. Before Rafa answered, "I'd like that." I had found the house. Her childhood house. Yellow, single-storied. A lime tree by the door. I opened the windows, let the sun warm the walls. On the back of a chair, I hung a half-finished blanket Rafa's aunt had been knitting the day before the move. When Rafa and Lucia came to visit for the first time, a summer storm had been brewing outside. The downpour caught them at the gates, and they ran inside, holding hands. The rain didn't stop. It smelled so fresh and made them laugh so hard, I couldn't help letting it in. I lit streetlight after streetlight like a trail of breadcrumbs to the yellow house. And the women walked inside, into the warm, dry dimness, and breathed in relief. I breathed in relief. and the rain swept my streets hard and deep, and it was as if, at last, I had a place in this world. I didn't listen at their door. Suffice it to say that the house had a content air in the morning, curled up on its street corner like a well-fed cat. And the streets stretched playfully at the women's feet when they walked out. While Rafa chattered and counted all the buildings she remembered, Lucia fingered something in her pocket. At the clock tower, she pulled Rafa down onto the steps and showed her something in her palm. A seed. The seed of you. Can you believe you were ever that small? Lucia whispered something and Rafa jumped up. Of course! You can plant it right here! There's a garden right around the corner. Lucia hesitated. My city is different, and I didn't live there long enough to grow to like it. It's big and dusty and gray and fast. It's noisy and overflowing. It's just what we need, Rafa said. She pulled Lucia by the hand into the small garden behind the clock tower, and they planted you there, between roses in the patch of ground warmed by the morning sun. They watered you and marked the place with stones. We'll need to get a glass bowl, Rafa said. They sat on the ground together. This part you remember. And Lucia started telling stories. She spoke about long-ago wars and long ship crossings and family grown strange. And I listened too. I listened and watched the tower sprout from seed. Gray concrete pointing at the sky. Rafa and Lucia watched over you. The outside sun seeped into my stones, and from there to yours. And your new heartbeat beat in time with mine. Your roots tangled with mine under the world. I felt you grow inside me, and myself expand around you. City around city, seed inside seed.
And welcome back. That was City Grown from Seed by Diana Dima, and although it was her first time as escape artist, she's had 5 other stories out just this year at markets as excellent as Choreo, The Deadlands and Giganotosaurus, so pop on over to dianadima.com for links to read them. Our second story today is Harvest House by Sarah Omer, narrated by Kitty Sarkozy. This story is a PodCastle original and rated G. Sarah Omer is an American Swana writer and poet with work published or forthcoming in The Dark, Apparition Lit, Small Wonders, Archive of the Odd, and elsewhere. She's been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and is the Associate Fiction Editor for Orion's Belt. Sarah lives in the woods outside of Atlanta with an old cat. You can find her online at sarah-omer.blogspot.com or on most social media sites as at OmerSarahE. Kitty Sarkozy is a speculative fiction writer, actor and robot girlfriend. Kitty is an alumnus of Superstars Writing Seminar, a member of the Apex Writers Group and the Horror Writers Association. Several large cats allow her to live with them in Marietta, Georgia. She enjoys tending the extensive gardens, where she hides the bodies. For a list of her publications, acting credits, or to engage her services on your next project, go to kittysarkozy.com. And now pay attention, for our tale is about to begin, and you should settle in cosy for it.
Harvest House by Sarah Omer. Read by Kitty Sarkozy. The houses grow up big and strong. They stand tall, orange as egg yolks with warty skin, swelling to fullness under ruffled leaves. On the first sunny day, we pick our home. Da uses a jagged tooth blade half the length of my arm to saw out a door, then carve a window. The spongy pulp of the walls barely gives, until the point of the blade thunks through. It sinks into fibrous guts, tangling in them. We scoop out the innards with our hands, fingers knotting in strands. I pile it all outside in great heaps, as tall as my little brother Lumpkin. Grandma keeps eyes on the sky in case birds come, always alert for black feathers. She says death flutters on wraith wings. It's too small, Ma says, stepping into the belly of our new house. She tucks her frizzy red hair behind her ear and wrings her freckled hands. Last fall, our home was tall enough for 3 stories, a thin white structure. This year it's squat and sunset orange, capped with a great curling peduncle. The smell of raw, sweet rot clings to the scraped-down walls and ceiling. A few stringy bits like loose threads trail on the floor. Da and I carve out more space for larger rooms. We work all day until our fingers shrivel and our sweat smells of house flesh, too. Da installs the same red door we used last year. Next fall, I'd like it if we'd pick a house the minty color of lichen or the verdant shade of moss. A springtime home to weather autumn in. Ma strings up lace doilies discolored with sun stains. Her curtains let in dappled shadows around noontime, perfect spiderwebbing lattice on yellow walls. "Patty, lend me a hand, could you, Wild Violet?" Da says, wiping house guts from his dark beard. Outside, Lump uses a bent spoon as a shovel, practicing digging holes to plant seeds. "We'll have to bury them deeper than that." Grandma pushes her spectacles higher on her liver-spotted nose. "Now that's too deep. Look out, Lumpkin Picker, you'll fall in." When we drag the black stove inside, Grandma cooks down pulp into puree. Bread and crisp, pie and pudding, soup and turnovers. We roast some of the huge seeds and slice them, sprinkle them over sticky buns. Ma fills baby food containers with the leftovers, canning them out front in a big tub. Da carries the large glass jars. They're so heavy his back nearly gives out. Lumpkin and I help out by ferrying boiling water. We work on heating the canning bath until the lids pop down, sealing shut. Lump and I gather sticks, and I help Da cut them into balusters for the upstairs railing. We heave up thin branches for support beams, and Da lays down bark floors. Around the field, the houses fill up, windows and doorways appearing on homes as the air cools and the days shrink. Each day, night comes faster, smearing the sky cold black. But we have warm food to heat our bellies. We've got wood chips to feed into the mouth of the stove. The fire keeps us from freezing until the sun peeks out again tomorrow. "My, he's really sprouting up," our neighbor says, smiling kindly at Lumpkin. We volunteered to clear out the leaves in front of her home, impaling crunchy fall foliage on clothespin spears. In exchange, the older lady put out a feast of harvest treats on a tea saucer platter. She baked house muffins and mixed the seeds into caramels that stick between my teeth. Cinnamon and sugar and nutmeg, when such exotic spices can be scavenged, turn savory house flesh into tantalizingly sweet fare. "You think so?" Ma asks, stirring honey into her tea. Lumpkin's small for his age. I was the one who shot up like a weed. Petunia Picker, her dandelion daughter. "Oh yes, he'll be a big, strong boy." Less windows out mean fewer eyes in, Ma always says. But one day my brother cuts a small square in his bedroom wall. Late into the night, the yellow insides of his room are illuminated by a tea light he uses as a chamber stick to examine his postage stamp collection. A whoosh, crack, squish, squish. I hear gnashing that makes my insides turn snow cold. A red paw half again as big as my brother shoots in, drawn to the jack-o'-lantern light. The creature's fishhook claws rake lines in the bruising wall. A snout of sharp teeth sinks into our house's skin, carving a corner of our home into ribbons. Lumpkin's candle flickers out, wax spilling, pulling, and hardening like a scab on the floor. Ma shrieks, but Da and I keep calm and trundle her, Grandma, and Lump down the creaky stick stairs to the baby food jars. We take cover behind them until the fox wanders off. Da inventories Lump as he wriggles in my grasp. Luckily, there's not a scritch on him. When morning squeezes through the cracks in the wall, I survey the damage. I swipe animal spit and dew off Lump's stamps and bundle up his one-patch quilt to move into my room. Lumpkin loves his collections. Postage stamps, big glass marbles he and the other kids can barely roll up the hill, buttons large enough to sled on. "Come on, Lump, you just need one," Da says, but our traveling wagon is always piled with haberdashery. Each notion has 4 circles to loop thread through, but Lump's buttons will never be finishings on a giant's fine coat. He has more fun with them anyway. I run a finger over a stamp's white scalloped edges, enjoying the tacky filling of the sticky backs. I admire the pretty illustrations of flowers, faces, and faraway places. It's easy to see why Lump likes peeling these off their shiny backing sheets and cutting them from envelopes and postcards. I see the value in the smooth buttons and whirling colors suspended in cat's eye marbles, but I stick to collecting things I forage near the house. My treasures include insect legs and beetle wings, 4-leaf clover, tufts of hair. I'd like a pet one day, only cats and dogs are too dangerous for people our size. A house mouse would chew through the walls, squeaking all night. I think an inchworm would make a fine companion until it squirmed away. "At least you're all right," I tell Lump, ruffling his auburn hair and handing him his stamps. "You can't fault the fox. It didn't choose to be big and hungry." At the Harvest Festival, Lumpkin runs up the hill, lugging his red rubber ball to play knucklebones with his friends. 6-prong metal jacks are big enough for the little kids to cower behind and look strong enough to rip the undercarriage off a paper airplane. They play the game a little different from how giants do. I lend an arm to Grandma, helping her hobble over to deposit a crock at one end of the banquet table. Stumps form a long line of chairs all the families sit on to dig into the potluck. Steam rises off mismatched plates. Their ceramic shards repurposed as dinner platters. Everyone thinks this is the best part of fall, lighting sparkler stubs in dry grass and stamping out fires, dancing to string fiddles and the rusted harmonica. It gets dragged back to its hiding knoll when winter comes. Takes 3 players with strong lungs to get a jaunty tune going. While Ma and Da giggle into their cups of blackberry wine, I hunch at the edge of the party, tugging at my tatty sack skirt, thinking I'd rather be at home. "Dance with us, Patty!" Lump shouts, leaping up and dragging me by the elbow. The children don't dance as much as they just link hands and run in a circle. When I fall down, dizzy, laughing something delirious, the stars wiggle like lightning flies up in the sky. A millipede climbs through the broken wall one night while Lumpkin is sleeping in my room. We're pretending it's a special occasion, a holiday, like when we all share a chamber in the abandoned rabbit burrows during winter solstice. Lump shakes me awake, pointing. My eyes land on the twitching antennae, segmented body, and ghost-pale legs. "Patty, Patty, look!" he whispers. "Shh," I tell him. "It's all right." The millipede curls into a ball when I walk over. "You don't want to hurt them, or they'll stink up the whole house." Its defense glands reek something awful and tastes terrible. Gets the big animal spitting and slathering. The bug pulls from its defensive curl. Its black eyes swivel, taking me in, landing on Lump, thinking he might be delicious. Thinking better of it when I raise a wood splinter threateningly. "Not my brother!" Its legs drum the wall with a whispery clicking noise. It melts into the shadows, disappearing through Lumpkin's room, back outside. I clutch my little brother extra tight that night, so nothing can take him away until he's big and strong. A flock of crows descends on our neighbor's house, cackling while they pick the walls to pulp. "It's just an early start to winter for us," the nice old lady says. Her wiry silver hair is disheveled instead of neatly coiffed now, but she still smiles, probably relieved everyone's alive. "That's the trouble with living like this," Da says, when their wagon disappears up the hill. Ma corrects him. There's beautiful resilience in being little. Despite the early winter chill, the walls sag, beginning to wrinkle up. Another rain, another warm day, and the roof will cover over with fuzzy decay that blackens as it molders. Every week, more birds make circles around the patch, chortling at their good fortune. The cloying smell of rotting fruit drives them ravenous. We pack up the wagon, using a spool of thread to tie down Lumpkin's buttons, Grandma's thimble pans, and the jars full of preserves. Dad pries our red door out of the soft wall and loads it up, while Ma takes down the lacy curtains. Our frost season home will last us longer, just so long as no new Warrens taken up residence in its subterranean halls. Really? I don't think I'd mind snuggling into a rabbit's warm, musky fur to weather a chilly winter. All through the snow, I'll dream of springtime with the meadow mice, of summer on our lily pad boat home, of autumn at our harvest house. Our family was the first to arrive, relishing our pick of the patch, and we're the last to leave. We watch from up on the hill as the birds descend in a frenzy onto the squat orange house that's collapsing in on itself. The empty doorway smiles toothlessly, lips wrinkled. There's crow's feet lines by gaping window eyes. Before we left, we sowed the ground with set-aside seeds, so next autumn, the field will be full of new houses.
And welcome back. That was Harvest House by Sarah Omer, and again, it was her first time at Escape Artist, but there's more available online. Head to sarah-omer.blogspot.com to get links to a few tales at other junctions on the information superhighway, like the Dark and Archive of the Odd. Thank you both for your stories. There are pretty obvious parallels in City Grown From Seeds of the diaspora experience that I am as unqualified to comment on as it is possible to be. But the lack of qualification there is, perhaps, a stronger grounding for discussing and thinking of the other aspect of that story, and of the heart of Harvest House. Home. Because I have lived basically my whole life, bar my student years, in a 20-mile triangle in Lincolnshire. I am a yellow belly through and through, back through generations. I was in my childhood home from 4 years old through to 24. My grandparents were in the same homes my entire life, till their deaths. My two youngest have lived their whole lives in this one home. When I say I put down roots, I mean that Nidhogg may as well be coiled up under my foundations. I am well aware of how fortunate I am to have had this stability. I've not been forced to move around by a parent in the armed forces, or by divorce, or by rent increases, or, even worse, by climate or political disaster in my home country. And I think it has played a huge part in where I've made it in life. Particularly knowing what I know now about my neurotype, if I'd had the shifting sands under my feet of a new house every 2 years, I don't think I'd have coped. We tried to move house from here a few years back, just before the pandemic kicked off, so you can imagine how well that worked out for us. But having seen how even a new pet in the house disrupts things for months with the kids, I think we finally had to concede that we'll be here forever because they need that constancy in their lives. When you look at Maslow's 5-layer hierarchy of needs, home is threaded through the lower 4 layers. The shelter and food of physiological needs, the stability of safety and security, the cocoon that enables love and belonging, the sense of pride needed for self-esteem. Home is the part of our world that enables, eventually, self-actualization, being the best version of ourselves, the version we want to be. I hope you have found, or will find, your home. And I hope, my God how I hope, that the world can stop gleefully tearing home away from Palestinians, or denying it to people seeking asylum, or squirreling away the available market in the name of investment portfolios, so that everyone can have the foundation they need to be the best version of themselves. And then, perhaps, the world can be the best version of itself. That was our show for this week. On behalf of everyone at PodCastle, your co-editors Shingai Enjoro Kagunda and Eleanor R. Wood, assistant editor Caitlin Zavanovich, audio engineers Devin Martin and Eric Valdez, and our many wonderful first readers, Andrew Cahoe, Craig Jackson, Amalia Harrington, Julia Patt, Kieran Corsaini, Ryan Cole, Sarah S. Messenger, Shrikripa Krishna Prasad, Tava Nova, Tierney Bailey, Zeev Witties, and myself, Matt Dovey. Thank you for letting us share another story with you. The legal bit. PodCastle is part of the Escape Artist Foundation, a 501c3 non-profit, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 international license. That means you can share it, and please do, but you cannot sell it and you cannot change it. If you want specifics, check creativecommons.org. Our music is by Shiva in Exile. Everything we do on PodCastle is 100% donor funded, and if you'd like to support what we and the rest of EA do, please join us on our Patreon at patreon.com/EApodcasts. Prefer another method? There's details for supporting us via Twitch, Amazon Prime, Ko-fi and PayPal on escapeartist.net. We'll be back next Tuesday with another fantastic tale. In the meantime, you might care to check out our sister podcasts, Escape Pod for science fiction, Pseudopod for horror, Cast of Wonders for YA speculative fiction, and Catscast for speculative cat stories. If your heart belongs to us though, we'll see you next week. Be safe and be kind.